Well, yeah, I asked him in the video, I said, do you tell people you love them a lot? And he goes, people think love is what you get from it. Love is what you give to it. And then behind me, this girl goes to walk into his restaurant, and he looks behind me and he goes, is this guy in the way? Push him, kick him. Like right after he tells me he loves me.
This is Taste. I'm your host, Matt Rodbard. I really love what Rob Martinez is doing on YouTube and TikTok. Rob is behind the voice and visuals of Eating with Robert, a delightful series of dispatches from restaurants around the world. As we found out in this interview, Rob has a film background and started his own feed as a way of highlighting his favorite New York City pizzerias, diners, Egyptian fish grills, and Turkish kebab sellers. Rob is doing the work, scouting and shooting the types of places journalists like Jonathan Gold, Lagaya Mishan, and Robert Sietsema became famous for. Robert is as much of a food writer as any of us in the industry, and it was cool to learn about his approach. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Rob Martinez, welcome. This is Taste. How the hell are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. It's an honor.
Buddy, I'm really excited to chat with you about so much. I think your online content and what you've done with your growing social platform is super impressive. I'm relatively new to your content, and listen, I've been really into it. And I want to get into the spirit of your work, which is like uncovering and shedding light on small business owners around America. You've gone international. Rob, first question though, I have to know, where have you been dining out recently in New York?
Well, I just got back from Oakland, and I've been dealing with a lot of comments about New York City Mexican food. And so I got to always defend New York City Mexican food. So I recently ate at Mariscos El Submarino in Jackson Heights. Yeah. I'm probably a little bit late to the game on that, but that was hella good. The aguachile, really good. The taco gobernador, which I'm probably butchering the pronunciation, but like a shrimp taco with cheese. Super good. Also just like a good vibe in there. Yeah, that place rules.
So when you say you're getting like shit online from about New York Mexican food, let's tap into that. Because what do you mean?
I mean, listen, New York has this kind of rivalry with Los Angeles. Yeah. And Los Angeles has incredible Mexican food. And, you know, New York, some would say, hasn't. But definitely recently, we've had a lot of great restaurants. And, you know, the products have gotten better here, like the tortillas have gotten better. And, yeah, I never feel good when people try to shit on the Mexican community here. Like, you know, you're talking about, this is like the backbone of the restaurant community in New York. And their own restaurants, for the most part, rip. Yeah. And listen, I like LA. Mexican food. When I was in LA and I ate Mexican food, it made me upset because it was really good. And I was like, maybe there's validity to the argument for sure. I'm not saying New York Mexican food is better than LA Mexican food, but I'm saying don't hate. It's good. There's good spots if you know where to go.
You know, exactly. And you know, there's always going to be people who have like pride of city. And if you are boosting like Marisco's place in Queens, someone in LA might be thinking you're being hyperbolic, because we can all admit, like, so much of online food content is hyperbolic. And really what I like about what you're doing with Eating with Robert and your videos is that you're bringing such humanity to this game. I would say reviewing with massive air quotes, because you're not really reviewing, but you're shedding light. And really, Rob, tell me, what makes a great food video in your estimate?
For my channel, I think people would say that it's a bit stripped down. So, you know, there's not a lot of trending audio. There's no like AI TikTok voice. I use voiceover pretty rarely. It's really kind of documentary style stuff. And also, I'm not that much in it. So like a good Rob Martinez video should have Rob Martinez in it for about the length it takes to take one bite, ideally. You know, just I'm there just so you know that I made it. But most of the time, it's like my disembodied voice just asking kind of like simple questions about a lot of family-owned legacy businesses and small businesses. And yeah, I think people like that. Maybe it's kind of like a curveball in the world of fastballs.
Great analogy. I love the sports reference. Are you Mets, Yankees? Are you Cubs? What are you?
I don't really watch baseball. I'm a Knicks fan.
You're a Knicks fan. Straight. Yeah, they're going to have a good year this year. Really interesting thoughts on that. And when you're talking about your style, third person documentary reportage, I see a real filmmaker. This isn't just you shooting with your iPhone. It may be, but I mean, it doesn't feel that way. Listen, Rob, tell us a little bit about your journey, your experience in filmmaking, because you clearly have a great vision.
Well, I have an incredible degree from SUNY Purchase
SUNY P.
in Westchester.
Oh, SUNY P. I definitely know that spot.
Oh, yeah, I got my degree in dramatic writing. I don't know where all the filmmaking stuff comes from. I just been at it for a long time doing the work in New York. Like in 2016, I was working at a wine marketing agency, and one of my clients needed videos. And so I was like, I could do that. And so I started making wine and food videos following sommeliers around New York City. And started kind of like learned how to use a camera while I was making that. I would come into the office and talk to my photographer, and I would say like, hey, the background blew out. Why? And they would be like, well, did you have auto ISO on? And I'd be like, what's ISO? And then we'd sit down and they taught me how to use a camera. And then I taught myself After Effects. And so I kind of started in food with my video career. And then I sort of built this freelance business over the years. And then in 2020, obviously, we had COVID. I lost all my clients. And I just decided, hey, let me try to host something. Like, I love making food videos. I rarely get to make them because I'm just like a mercenary kind of like producer, editor. Mm-hmm. Let me just try to get in front of the camera and host some stuff. And so I did for 2 years. And then that led me to my opportunity with Righteous Eats. So I joined them as a producer for 2 years. And then 6 months ago, I kind of broke off on my own, and yeah, here we are. Now I'm standing in front of you.
Yeah. And I'm watching a lot of your videos, and we'll go over so many of them. I have specific questions. I'm going to link to so many of them in the show notes, as many as I can if it doesn't break your phone. Now, let me ask you about Righteous Eats. You clearly are part of a group of creators who really you did tremendous work. I mean, what a brand, and I love what Jay and the team has done there. What were you up to with Righteous? Because I feel like you were there right when it really started popping off.
Well, they had been running it for, I think, a couple of years, Brian and Jay Key, and I actually pitched Jay Key to be on my show, and Brian wrote back to me saying, hey, why don't you come in and maybe be an executive producer and be a partner in this project? I guess when I joined, I kind of saw they had been making the types of videos that I liked to make, that I was also making on my own about small businesses. When I jumped in, it was kind of easy for me. I'd never made a TikTok video, but it was easy for me to book. And, one of the earliest places we booked was Cuts and Slices when they were kind of like really starting to pop off. I booked a couple of people I had had on my YouTube show, including this great restaurant called New York Titlan, which is no longer around. Went to Varanick House. That was like our first shoot. And so I felt like I understood kind of in my DNA what they wanted to do. And I basically just said, cool, let me come in and just start booking like crazy. We also changed the format a bit as kind of like the 2 years went on to be, Jakey obviously has an iconic voice, so we wanted to keep that intact, but we also did interviews and some other things, and I started hosting some shows. So we also built a team that I managed and all kinds of things like that. So yeah, my role at Righteous Eats was just to take the kind of like genius spark of an idea and just kind of keep blowing at it and building it.
Well, congrats on the success with Righteous, but now you're on your own, and I think your future is so bright. And let me ask you, when you're scouting, what are you looking for in the restaurant? And I got to ask, like, it's inevitable that some meals don't hit. Are you necessarily judging a restaurant by the cuisine, or are you looking for more of a narrative?
Well, there's two things. First of all, I really don't respond to invitations to restaurants, and I don't trade coverage for food or pay. So people can DM me or email me, and it's very rare, unless I'm already thinking of the place as a story, that I'll respond, which I feel bad about, but that's just how it has to
be. You have
be.
very clear ethics guidelines on your site and on your Instagram, and I love that you just spell it out very clearly. It's cool.
Yeah. And then, when it comes to the food itself, it kind of sounds bad, but like the tastiness of it, the deliciousness of it is not my number one qualifier. Obviously, it should be good because sometimes a lot of people go there when I make these videos. And if it's bad, it could be really bad for the restaurant, like if the food is bad. But rarely has any of the food, I've ever featured on my own channel or on Righteous Eats been like not good. There's one time I can think of where we were like, this is not really hitting today, but the chef was having a rough day. So, but, I look at the story in terms of, does it spark interest in me? Is it something that is underreported, because again, I'm looking at what everyone's doing and I'm thinking, how do I subvert what they're doing? And oftentimes with the scouting, I go in person. I tend to book via phone call or going in person. If it's a newer restaurant, I can send a DM. It's a little bit easier. But yeah, I'll go in and just sort of sheepishly like eat my little meal and think in my head, like, is this it?
Yeah.
And then when I know, I kind of approach.
Well, that's a real art. I've been in that seat myself, and you want to approach, and especially for folks, maybe English is not the primary language, or maybe there's skepticism about media. Maybe there's skepticism that you're looking for money, which I think a lot of owners get approached by people asking for money. So what's your way of introducing yourself to a restaurant?
I think it's the exact same way every time, which is I put on my best telephone voice and I say, "Hi, my name is Rob. I'm a video producer and I'd like to talk to somebody here who owns this restaurant who maybe want to talk to me on camera about your story because I really found this food so interesting." And then ideally I get a phone number or that person's like, "Hey, that's me." And then I'm like, "Great." And then we just chit chat. If I go into a place, I've gone into places and have been just immediately like, the vibe's not right. I also ask little like probing questions. I'll be like, "Hey, who's the owner? Do they usually come in?"
Yeah.
Things like that, because I want to go to places where if I make a video, you're going to go in and you're going to see that person.
Great instinct and call there. I think that's a really cool point about your video. It's like there's a face behind this place.
Yeah. So I want to highlight those places that is imbued with a sense of personality, and quite often they're imbued with generations. Now is what I've been focusing on. So, it's a lot of instinct, honestly. There's no formula for it.
Definitely not. I want to get into a few specific videos. One is the spicy owner at Kebab Cafe in Queens. What a character. And I think it's a real talent. And I use the word humanity because it's true, Rob. You can clearly get a lot from your subjects and your guests, because there's clearly a shared experience happening in it, and you're getting these interviews that are really real.
Yeah, thanks. That video is, I think, my favorite video I've ever done.
Wow.
When I approached Ali, right, that was one of the ones where I gave him a phone call. I didn't know much about him. I had shot at Mumbar. So next door, his brother runs a place called Mumbar. And there are these two restaurants in Astoria, Kebab Cafe and Mumbar. Mumbar, the outside is it's a piece of art. It took the owner years and years and years to create it. And Kebab Cafe is actually the first Egyptian restaurant in what is now referred to as Little Egypt, Astoria. So I gave him a call and he said, "Sure, come in tomorrow." I said, "Great." I came in tomorrow, the next day, and I said, "Hey, my name is Rob. We talked yesterday," and he goes, You're the guy." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Now, you didn't send me any fucking thing you've ever done. I don't know who the fuck you are." And I was like, "Oh, my apologies. You didn't follow up. I thought we were good to go." He's like, "How long you been doing this?" I said, "I don't know, a little while." He goes, "It doesn't fucking seem like it." And I just started laughing because what am I going to do? I just had to laugh it off. And then, I stuck with him and he's like, "You need me. I don't fucking need you." He's like, "You want this story? You fucking need me." I said, "You're right, man." I said, "Listen, can I come back tomorrow? I'll make it right." He goes, "Come back tomorrow." And then as I go to leave, he goes, "I love you, Habibi." And I go, "Okay." He goes, "See you tomorrow. Love you."
It's a really, really clearly the report. And in the subsequent video, you have a lot of back and forth in a similar tone and tenor. A guest comes in and you're like, "This fucking guy."
Well, yeah, I asked him in the video, I said, "Do you tell people you love them a lot?" And he goes, "People have a misunderstanding about love. People think love is what you get from it. Love is what you give to it." And then he goes, "I'm glad I told you I love you. I don't tell everybody that I love them." And then behind me, this girl goes to walk into his restaurant and he looks behind me and he goes, "Is this guy in the way? Push him, kick him." Like right after he tells me he loves me. So it's just, the video has this tension, and I'm always looking for, like, I always say tension and pride.
Yeah.
Those are like my two keywords when I'm looking for videos.
That's great. What's the food like at Kebab Cafe? What are we ordering there?
You don't really order. You just sit down and he makes you kind of whatever he wants to make you. Usually it's, Egyptian classics like kedgeree and kebabs. Everything just from his hand. He's kind of the only guy who works there. It's really a crazy restaurant.
Yeah.
It's a crazy experience. Yeah.
New Asha Sri Lanka is part of the I Like This Place series. And Rob, tell me about the weekend crab curry.
Yeah, New Asha. That was one place where I came in and I ate, and I was very patient. And then I approached Sabas, one of the owners. And I think, again, that established a rapport between us. When I came in the next time, they were just happy to receive me, like almost like like a neighbor or something like that. You know, I was just hanging out in the kitchen. They made me chai tea. They showed me everything, how they make everything, you know, very painstakingly. It ends up, you know, taking a lot of time when they do that, but it was a nice time. And Sabas was watching cricket, and he burned the fish cakes, and Udaya made me a crab curry, and it just felt so lovely. And the food was so good. And so then I just had this idea to write this thing called I Like This Place.
Rob, a really memorable video that I think has multi-parts is the profile of Fidel Cortez Jr., an artisan Mexican sorbet seller in Brooklyn. And you wrote me and told me that this video had a big impact on him. And what I like about the video is you're in his home kitchen and you're learning how to this sorbet, and it looks incredible. I got to seek this out. What do you mean by the impact?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of creators who will show the impact of their videos probably better than I would. And it's hard to gauge. So Nieves Cortez, I wasn't the first person who covered it. Actually, Chris Crowley covered it in New York Mag. A guy named Dave at It's Family Style. I think he went there first, and then Pauly Mars went there, who's another creator. So I wasn't late to it, but you know, I think whenever you make a video that does 3 or 4 million views, it has kind of a crazy impact, I've learned. And, you know, a lot of lines for Fidel, and Telemundo came out, and a lot of local reporters and things of that nature. But I will say, I mean, I've already said, I'm not going to take all the credit for that. Other creators went there. And then on top of that, Fidel himself is very like social media savvy. He had a lot of TikTok followers. He almost had more TikTok followers than me.
Yeah.
So he's done a good job of taking this kind of like sliver of fame for him and his father, who, by the way, are also for years well known in Bushwick, and he's just been capitalizing on it every day. And yeah, I wish him all the best, man. I love watching every time he posts. I love it.
Yeah, and tell me, what's the sorbet like? What flavors are we getting? And he's selling it out on the street, right?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's some controversy around calling it sorbet, so you can call it sorbet.
All right.
But the name is nieve, which translates to snow in Spanish, and it's this traditional. It's like sorbet.
Yeah. But not in snow. We'll call it a snow-like sorbet.
Yeah. And they're called nieve de garrafas. So there's a wooden garrafa. Inside of the wooden garrafa, there's a steel bote. And this steel bote, which is another jar, has all this juice in it. And then outside of that, there's all this ice and salt. And then he just sits on the street, sometimes with his father, sometimes with his wife, and they just turn it. And they keep turning it and turning it and turning it, and the steel bote gets colder and colder, and the inside starts to crystallize. And he's there, and he said it's like an art, because he's constantly checking it for the texture, knowing when it's right to serve and when it's not right to serve, knowing when it needs to turn and when it doesn't. So in the video, you'll see I go and I see all his process, but then I have to wait 2 hours. I went to Churko's pastry shop and filmed there. Came back, brought him and his dad some cannolis, and kept filming.
Cool. Yeah. That's a good trade.
Yeah.
I guess. So what are the flavors?
His flavors change daily. He'll usually post about them. Commonly, you'll get lime, which is awesome. He does one called pitaya, which is like a dragon fruit. Very painstaking process for him to peel all these dragon fruits. And then the melon is really good. But yeah, it changes every day.
And he's using like fresh fruit, and he's going to the market and all that.
Yeah, he's literally chopping it up in the morning.
Yeah. Well, I love seeing the prep in the video. It's cool.
Yeah.
You've taken the show on the road to a few spots, and which I like, expanding the universe. You mentioned being out in Oakland, and I like that hangout you had in the East Bay. That was cool. But you ended up in Columbus, Ohio, and I love the choice. And tell me, how did you end up in Columbus, and like, what did you find out about Columbus, Ohio?
Yeah, I mean, it was a total accident to end up in Columbus. I had like my only ever brand deal, and they wanted me to interview somebody for them. And I said, listen, I would love to do an interview, but I focus on place. I didn't mention this. Basically, all of my series are neighborhoods and places. So, for the Kebab Cafe video, that's part of a story a week. And the whole week, I'm just covering Astoria. So I told them this. I said, so whoever you send me for an idea, just know that I'm probably going to go wherever they are and make like a week of content. And they said, great. And they sent me 3 choices. And every choice was in Columbus, Ohio. So I said, okay. I was like, let me not get this little like idea I have in my brain. Let me not get in the way of making money, because I have to make some money. But then I started looking at it more, looking at Columbus, doing some research. And I said, you know what? I think I can make this happen. So I was there for 48 hours. I shot 5 videos. So 2 of them were for the brand with a great interview with this guy named Chef Man. He was a personal chef. Spent like 8 hours in his home just kicking it. And then a few others, one at Izzo Pepperoni, which provides a lot of the nation's pepperoni. And one at this place called Ding Ho, which invented this dish called Warsugai.
Yeah.
Which is very popular in the Midwest, very popular in Ohio, and I think in Michigan they call it almond boneless chicken.
Yep.
Yeah. And
that's right. I'm from Kalamazoo, so definitely.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
I've heard of it. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm very interested in like who invented this dish. And then I filmed with him. I said, okay, I got my little bit of content in Columbus. I made it worth it for me. Released that video and I just went crazy. It just picked up so much steam and Ding Ho started selling out. And I thought to myself, all right, let me go fly myself out of my own pocket back to Columbus to get some more stories. And that's when I filmed Buckeye Donuts and this place called Wario's, which is like such a good sandwich shop. And what did I learn about Columbus? Man, super diverse, great food city. Shouts out to C-Bus Food Adventures. They're like old school food bloggers who have started a tour company, a food tour company. And they put me onto so many great spots. They drove me around. There's an amazing African community out there, like a huge amount of Somali folks. I covered a woman who makes Tanzanian food, which I had never had before, which was awesome. Yeah, man, Columbus, very underrated.
Wonderful statement about one of our greatest Midwestern food cities. I totally agree. Columbus is a really excellent place to visit. Tell me about yourself, about where you grew up and what was food like in your household growing up?
Oh, that's funny. Well, I grew up on Long Island in Suffolk County. In a place called Ronkonkoma.
Yeah. From a guy who grew up in Kalamazoo, we both have to deal with our hometown name. Saying it out loud a bunch of times.
Well, in New York, there's a train that goes to Ronkonkoma, and it says, "You are now on the train to Ronkonkoma." And every time I see anybody say I'm from Ronkonkoma, they'll shout that at me. But growing up in Ronkonkoma, my father's Puerto Rican, my mother's American Italian, and we ate a lot of chicken and pasta and, and some Puerto Rican things as well. But I grew up, I never even ate fish. Very picky.
You were?
Yeah. Even my sister always says, she's like, if people only knew how you grew up. And then I think it was really watching food TV, like people like Bourdain, where I started going, oh, wow, there's kind of this whole other world. Like I didn't leave the country until I was like 26, by the way. Like our vacation was like Hershey, upstate. I think we made it to South Carolina once. Yeah, not far.
Classic New York City story. A lot of staying local, and you got a lot going in your backyard. So
yeah, I mean, we were the type of family that like when we went on vacation and someone put mustard on the burger, my father would drive back around to the drive-thru and be like, "What did you do to this burger?" It was like insane to him that anybody put mustard on a burger. To this day, he has never eaten Thai food, Indian food. Like that's my family, basically. And then somehow through food TV and going to SUNY Purchase, just like an art college, I just started getting into, getting more curious, I guess, and exploring my neighborhood up there. And then moving to New York City, obviously, I moved to Jackson Heights, which couldn't be more different than Ronkonkoma.
Yeah.
And, then just learning about Colombian food and Tibetan food. And my job was in Flushing, so I'd go to Flushing. And it just opened
Is that
up
where you live now, Jackson Heights?
I live in Ridgewood now, Queens.
Right on.
Yeah.
But Jackson Heights, you're getting a lot of cool spots in your backyard there.
Oh yeah, I lived on 86th and Northern, which I guess might be East Elmhurst. But yeah, at home I was eating egg sandwiches most of the time, but now I was having pan de bono. Totally different.
The evolution is like a lot of our listeners and a lot of people in general. When you're in your early 20s and you're watching Bourdain and you're maybe picking up some cookbooks and watching now a little TikTok, and like your journey starts. And what better place to start than living in New York City, where you can just walk down the street? Yeah,
I remember I looked at my first apartment, and my friend Isa, who was from downtown Brooklyn, but she was like, "I know this place near you in Jackson Heights, near this apartment. Let's go." And she drove me to this place called Taste Good Malaysian in Woodside, and I had Singapore curry laksa, and it was so good. And that place still rips.
Yeah. Do you feel that right now in covering all of these smaller mom and pop restaurants? Right now, are we feeling inflation? Are we feeling the prices? Are these restaurants hurting?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're smiling. I mean, you're not smiling but you're like dumb at like, geez.
It's a bad time for mom and pop restaurants. I mean, that's part of the idea. It's part of what I do is preserving, in a sense, doing a snapshot of these restaurants because so many of them are unfortunately disappearing. I mean, like the cost of everything is so incredibly high for restaurants right now. Eggs, I hear a lot about. But I'm doing this show now, like this show on the side, this YouTube show, where we have to make a meal for like less than a certain amount of money.
Oh, cool.
And I keep going to these restaurants that I used to go to back in the day for like a cheap fix or whatever. And everything is just crazy. I mean, and I don't blame the restaurants, but like it's really hard for consumers right now to eat out, which makes it harder for restaurants who have to charge more. It's kind of a perfect storm. I don't think you could talk to any restaurant owner who'd be like, I'm thriving. 2024 is the best year ever. It's just, it's down across the board.
Yeah. And like, we've got a lot of like external forces with, just inflation in general, not just food costs, but all costs. And of course, we're really feeling it, financially. And many folks are questioning if it's worth going out and eating at a restaurant, and that question of like, should I cook at home or should I dine out is affecting these restaurants so much.
Oh yeah. I feel bad for a lot of like the local standbys in my neighborhood who now, you want to get a plate of like pernil and rice and beans. It used to be something that you could count on for like $10 or less. And now it's like $15. Like,
yeah,
that's rough.
Yeah. It's something that we're keeping our eye on the show. And I hope there's a change in trajectory when it comes to this movement. I don't see us getting out of it.
I don't know what people are going to do.
Yeah. Let's talk about the Fritto Misto at Pesceria Gallina in Torino. And I love seeing you take your aesthetic and your inquisitive nature and your general American East Coast vibe. You take it to Italy. And I feel like it's a real unlock for you. It puts you in a fully new kind of Rob. It's like you on the road. And I love the Torino videos. Tell me what you learned about Torino.
Well, Torino is a great city. It's like the fourth largest city in Italy, I believe.
Yeah.
And it feels very underrated. Like if you say I'm going to Turin, people are like, what? Like they've almost never heard of it.
Yeah.
I started going to Turin because I did a show in Italy with a sommelier named Jeff Porter. Great dude. And we shot all around Italy. We shot in like half of the states of Italy, 60 days. And my crew was based in Turin. So whenever we had a break, I'd like to go hang out in Turin with my guys, who I still love. And whenever I'm around there, I feel like the need to return and see my friends that, they have kids and stuff like that. So for this series of videos, I linked up with my friend's ex-girlfriend, Valentina, and had her be my fixer. And she just knows everybody in Turin. And, we spent a lot of time talking about what makes a good video for me. Like how do we kind of cover the things that are typical, maybe a bit universal, but also really specific to Turin, things like agnolotti del Plin, which is more, I guess, specific to Piedmont. I think I'm really proud of the videos we came out with. They didn't perform like gangbusters.
Interesting. Surprising.
But, if you really think about, well, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the algorithm, maybe too much time. And once I reflect on it, I understand why they didn't perform very well. But yeah, Turin as a city, I think one of the things that people can one thing that people can take away about it is that it doesn't have a lot of tourists.
Yeah.
So, people complain a lot about Rome being like overrun. Turin, it's students, locals, and frankly, immigrants. And that makes it kind of more charming. You feel like you can live like a local there. The food is world class. It's near Piedmont, which is a world class wine region. Also just one of the most beautiful places in the world, especially around now, like October, truffle season. It's like unreal. I love it. It's very charming.
Tell me about the Fritto Misto, because I felt like that was something that it felt like we were experiencing your absolute delight and kind of your surprise about how the quality of it in that video. I love that moment there.
Turin has the oldest or the largest outdoor market in Europe. It's called Porta Palazzo. And basically this guy, Beppe, who's a maniac, which you can see in the video, he's insane. Great dude. His family has been in that market for over a century. And he started to see kind of the market forces at work and thinking, okay, there are these chains coming and maybe I should protect my family and maybe I should open up a restaurant outside of Porta Palazzo. And that's the place that I went. So he has all of this insane knowledge of fish from his grandma, from his mother. And then he combined that with just making an absolutely incredible fish restaurant that just gives you piles of fried, delicious. A lot of it local from Liguria.
Yeah.
Fish, yeah.
I mean, the butchering shots too, the cross sections, the beheading, and
yeah, and those guys who do all the butchery have been there for like 40 years with him.
those guys are fast.
Yeah.
With knives. I love that scene. I could talk to you all day about these videos. And again, like check out all the accounts, and I'm going to link to some episodes in the show notes. Rob, let's talk about production a little bit. I want to get a sense of your tech setup. Like when you're walking into these spaces, is it just you? Do you have a producer with you or shooter? What's it like shooting these videos?
Yeah, I'm doing everything alone. Like I said, when I went to Italy, it was helpful to have a translator and a fixer. But for the most part, I'm walking into every place just me. I shoot on an iPhone 13 Pro, specifically that one. Even when I upgrade, I'll keep the 13 Pro and keep shooting on it. I shoot with DJI Mic 2 is what it's called. I find it to be a little bit more idiot-proof than the Rodes.
Yeah.
I mean,
these are shotguns or lavs? What are these?
These are lavs. You can see them in the video.
Yeah, those are the lavs.
Kind of like
clip on. Yeah.
Yeah. If you talk to any like old school sound person, like my guy in Italy, he hates seeing microphones, and I'm just like, dude, people know it's a video. It's over. Like, like we're not trying to hide the microphones anymore. Like, people know they're watching a video.
I mean, there's something charming in the fact that you're using these clip-on lavs, and you're not like trying to be too Hollywood with it. It feels like this is the way you shoot in situ.
Yeah. I mean, I'm standing like probably closer to them than I am to you, and just chatting, and if the camera kind of melts away because it's just this tiny little iPhone. And then I think there's also this quality of like people experience their lives on their phone. They use their camera and that has their memories and stuff like that. And so I kind of want that quality. Like I want when people watch my videos, they can almost see through their phone, right?
Yeah.
And see what's on the other side. Sometimes I relate it to like a first-person video game, like BioShock or something like that. Like just a disembodied voice kind of like walking through, the fish market of Turin, and you can just kind of experience that. And hopefully I ask some good questions.
I mean, you really do. You produce these segments and these episodes really well, and we've talked about the humanity. But on the tech side, having those small iPhones gets you in tight, and obviously no one knows you're shooting something that's going to be seen by 7 million people.
Yeah.
It's cool. No, this is a massive compliment because it does not read like, an old tech iPhone, because it feels like you clearly hit this 13. It seems to be the right tech for you.
Well, the 13, it focuses closer than the other phones.
Yeah.
So like you can get closer to food. With the 14 on, it snaps into macro mode. It looks bad. So,
dude, that's when the phone got bad, or the camera got bad.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone was like, "Man, the camera sucks now."
Yeah. So I stick with the iPhone 13, and I mean, also it's just so flexible. I mean, like I said, I come from a somewhat traditional video background. Like, I can operate these cameras, Clayton.
We're filming here, guys. To be on the internet at some point, our videos.
But the iPhone is just so flexible. I never have to think about my white balance, my ISO, my shutter speed. I can just walk in, and it can adapt to so many situations. And all I'm thinking about is I'm looking around the space and going, cool, where's the light? What lights do I need to turn off if I need to turn anything off? Which is something I've had to do. Like, I'll ask a restaurant to turn off every light in there.
Yeah.
If I want to get my shots,
No, definitely. Now, I want to segue and talk a little about monetization, and really, I'm going to link to your Patreon in the show notes and support Rob that way. There's other ways too. We'll get into the t-shirts, which are super cool. But I saw you posted on a candid Instagram story, about the challenges creators face, and really, the way that maybe we aren't supporting our creators that we're like definitely loving and thumbing through every single day. And I feel like, how do you actually make a living with this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways to make a living as a creator. Something I don't do, which I've mentioned that a lot of creators do, is I don't accept any money from restaurants. So, but some of these creators get like $1,000 per post, or $750 per post, and a lot of them also segue that into being like a social media manager. So like they'll manage a restaurant's social media page and do all the photography and stuff like that. But then also the restaurant gets like 3 videos on that channel that are not disclosed that they're actually an ad.
Yeah.
That's very popular. Anyway, I don't do any of that. Basically, I just use YouTube AdSense, TikTok AdSense. It pays maybe, I'm not supposed to say my CPM.
Whatever, man. I'm not looking for tea. I mean, you're pretty candid about economics on your post.
Yeah, but whatever. It's like, I think it's like 11 cents per thousand or something like that. Not very much. Basically, it's like 1 million views on YouTube gets me like $1,100.
Yeah.
Is that the math? And then on $110.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. 1 million views gets me about $110. And then on TikTok, 1 million views gets you about $400. And if you do long form and you're 8 minutes plus, then you can actually make some money. So like, me and another creator are developing a YouTube show, and, we're not thinking about it as like a cash cow, but we're like, hey, that could be a good way. If we can make something popular, like that can make you actually some decent money, because it's more like $10 per thousand. And then you're making like 100K per million. 10K per million.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, yeah.
Jesus. The math
No, bro,
is
I'm with you on
the math is not math.
on the tens. I know what you're saying. I mean, it's clear that it's less than many would think, particularly given how much work you put into it with the travel and all that, and also just in general. You've got millions of people watching your videos.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like it's a crazy amount of views for a little amount of money. So like, I think on YouTube I'm averaging like 15 million views a month.
Yeah.
Like some months go by and I'm getting 1 million views a day on YouTube. But the takeaway is like 36 grand a year or something like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I mean, you work in the food media. I've become pretty comfortable living lean.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. But...
like I took a big pay cut to work at Righteous Eats, and even now, I think maybe I'm making as much money as I made there just on like AdSense and stuff. But yeah, I've become very comfortable living lean. Some other ways that I try to make some money is Patreon. I sold some merch, though that's probably going to be costing me more money than anything, because you have to drive all this demand, and it's a whole thing I didn't learn it until I actually did it. And then, brand deals can pay you a ton of money. So like Colgate is like, hey, why don't you make a video and brush your teeth after? This is like the bad version, but they're going to pay me like a big bag. Like,
yeah.
But I'm not really like big game hunting. I don't have time to email Colgate.
Yeah. Colgate, reach out. Or anybody reach out to Rob. You're going to listen to the show, and I think your work speaks for itself, and clearly you have an audience, so there's like an A+B there.
Yeah. I mean, also, on the other hand, though, like I won't accept some like shit brand deal. Like,
yeah.
I'm cool living lean. Like for me to make 40K a year from like YouTube and TikTok AdSense, I'm like, I'm crushing it, yo. To make 40K a year just making food videos, that's like the greatest. That's awesome. Not enough to live on in New York City, not even close. But I'm not going to bend over backwards to do like some bullshit that like kills the loyalty of my audience.
I respect that take. It's not even a take. I respect that ethic that you have, and really support Rob and what he's doing. I want to ask you about these T-shirts. It's cool. You split the profits with the restaurant. The designs are great. Do you design them yourself?
No, Maddie Fisher, great illustrator. This is a weird little bio thing, but like I got one poem published in my life, and in this book of poems, it was illustrated by Maddie Fisher. This is like years ago. So I always just had her in my head. And then when I had merch, I reached out like, hey, you probably don't know who I am, but I'm like one poem in this big book of poems that you drew.
Oh, cool.
And so we reconnected, and she lives in Ridgewood. And it's one T-shirt for the first like 5 weeks of content that I made. So there's one in San Francisco, one for the Bronx, one for Brooklyn, one for Philly, and one for North Jersey. And they're good. They're quality. They're printed in Bushwick by my friend Brendan at Beezer Printing, which I also did a mini documentary about. They're good shirts.
That's great. I'm going to link to the show. They look really cool, and they support local restaurants, which I love to see what you're doing. I mean, that's rad. More people should buy these.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it doesn't make any sense for me to like. I'm not going to put somebody else's business on a T-shirt and take all the money.
Well, I like that you give. Obviously, you give them shirts, and they're the models in the
yeah.
I like that a lot.
I went and shot those myself. Well, in San Francisco I had a guy named Alan shoot, and then in Philly I had another guy shoot named PJ, and then in Jersey, Brooklyn, and the Bronx I shot those myself.
It's real cool. Where do you want to go, city wise, country wise? What's on your list of destinations that you'd like to give these deep dives into?
I want to go deeper into America. So, all the other countries are really glossy and nice, and there's like a pleasure-seeking part of my brain that would like to go there. But I am American, and I feel some sense of duty to cover America, especially like I said, now when so many kind of like small mom and pop businesses are disappearing. So that's really kind of my focus going into 2025 is America.
America. Is there a region you haven't visited, like of the country?
There's so much. I'm way less well-traveled than people might think. I haven't been to many states. I've never been to like New Mexico and the Southwest. Like I would love to go.
Yeah.
Albuquerque or something like that.
That'd be great. I'd love to see that. Let's make that happen. Let's figure it out. Let's do it.
I'm sending emails out.
Sending emails out. Hit up Rob. Is there a New York City restaurant grail that is just on the list to shoot at?
I think Junior's Cheesecake is a place that I will film at. And I would love to get the story because it is a great story.
It's also really good cheesecake.
Yeah.
So good. I think it's underrated. I think people are like, oh, it's like a brand, but
better than any cheesecake in LA.
LOL, like shot taken.
No, I'm just kidding.
No, we're kidding here. But like, it's good. It's really good there.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then Roll and Roaster. But I don't think I can. I've actually spoken with Roll and Roaster, and I don't think that will ever happen.
Why?
They're very protective over what they do, but I just love it. I love the aesthetic. I love everything about it.
I've been to the one out in Brooklyn once, but do you remember when they had that spot in the East Village?
No.
They had a Roll and Roaster in the East Village.
What?
For real, like maybe 2007, 2008.
Oh, shit.
They had a Roll and Roaster on like
it's a dream.
It was right by Webster Hall. I remember going to shows at Webster Hall and hitting Roll and Roaster afterwards.
Every restaurateur in New York would kill to have the clout of Roll and Roaster.
we have Roll and Roaster fan base here. Describe what it is.
Roll and Roaster is a restaurant. It's in Sheepshead, right?
Yeah.
And they specialize in roast beef, and they have a big wheel that you spin on your birthday, and you can get free stuff. And they also give you a pizza if you spend over like $35 or something like that.
Fun fact: they serve pizza.
Yeah, they give you a free pizza if
wow.
you spend over a certain amount.
Wow.
But yeah, I'm a fiend for hot roast beef sandwiches. So
yeah,
naturally. Oh, and also the last Grail. I'd like to get an interview in with Keith McNally. I don't know where he's at with doing interviews, but
yeah. So what are you going to ask Keith? I think you're on the list of like maybe 100 journalists for that one, but I think you got a shot, man.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd ask Keith, but I would just let him rock. He's a maniac.
He is on a tear.
Yeah.
He is on a tear for real. Come on the show, Keith.
Come on, Keith.
Come on, you got 2 spots.
I did it.
Yeah, we have 2 spots for you. You can come on anytime. Robin, this is Taste. We ask guests about their discerning taste. So to close this interview, here's a little rapid fire, fast and furious taste check. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
The best fruit.
Well, I think you got to think about fruits in terms of floors and ceilings. So, a pear is a miserable low floor, but a really great pear is an incredible high ceiling. An apple doesn't really have a very low floor. It doesn't really have a very high ceiling. So if you're looking at a fruit on its best day, I think you got to go peach.
For sure. It's the ceiling goes to the moon.
It's unreal.
A great peach, but there's definitely a low floor there. The mealiness of those, but great call. The worst vegetable.
I'm going to go with zucchini or courgette. It kind of sucks.
Yeah, it comes up a lot here. Agree. It's just so prevalent in the summer, but man.
Watery.
It's not easy to cook with. The best dessert.
The raspberry cream pie at Briarmere Farms on the North Fork of Long Island.
I love the idea of raspberries and cream. It's like I grew up with that. I love that.
It's an unbelievable pie.
Tell me what's the crust?
It's just a traditional pie crust, but it's just a thick layer of like a mix of cream cheese and also whipped cream. And then they have just this homemade thick layer of raspberry jam. It's outrageous. Rob,
the New York City restaurant you visit the most?
Recently for a story, the Arepa Lady. I went there a lot. But often you can probably find me at Sobremasa in Bushwick.
Okay, the number 1 slice in New York City.
Nana's in Great Kills, Staten Island, the upside down slice.
Upside down, what is that? Tell me.
Sauce on top, cheese on the bottom. It's an incredible slice. It's outrageous. It's better than any of the new slices.
Favorite spot for tacos?
Ooh, I'm going to give the nod. I'm going to do 2. First of all, very underrated spot, the Carnitas Taco at Tortas Neza in Corona. And then for tacos guisados, which are flour tortillas filled with stews, you got to go to Bordertown. Unbelievable.
Yeah, Bordertown is a great call there. Good one. Favorite pasta in New York City?
People know that I always love La Rina in Fort Greene. The smoked spaghetti is unbelievable there, but also the lasagna is out of this world.
Lasagna, hard in a restaurant sometimes, hard hang. A few of the creators you actually follow.
Sure. So I got to show love to @Moober Julian Moo. He's one of the few creators who creates food content, and I look at what he does, and I think, I wish I did that. He's smart. He makes great series. He finds amazing places. Julian Moo. I'll also say Nicholas Newvon, who's maybe a little bit larger of a creator, but he is really focused right now on the West Indian culture in New York, and I think his style, his curiosity is so genuine. I think everything him and his team are doing are knock it out of the park. And then a smaller up-and-coming creator I'd suggest is Pete Candia, who's actually a food writer for the New Jersey Digest. He is like a New Jersey food freak, and he makes cooking videos that are getting better and better every time he makes them. He's a young guy. Pete Candia, great
I like
guy.
your interest in North Jersey. That's rad.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've been making some putting on some miles there.
I love North Jersey.
Yeah, it's a good
Great
spot.
food.
A cuisine you would like to learn more about?
Kind of like generally West African food. I think every time I have it, I think this is unbelievable. So when I cover Harlem eventually, there's a great restaurant there called Pekin that does Senegalese food, and I'd love to dive in.
Your favorite cookbook of all time?
I give two again. I would say The Art of Simple Cooking by Alice Waters and also The Art of Fermentation by Sandor Katz.
Man, I love that Sandor Katz book.
Oh, that's a crazy book. It's like a textbook.
Yeah, it's a textbook with like some narrative in there. He's been on the show. It's a good old episode. I'll link to it. Excellent.
Yeah.
A favorite city outside America to visit for food?
I give it to Mexico City. I think people already know that, but Mexico City is a panoply of delights. Just an incredible place.
Last one, your favorite sandwich?
Favorite sandwich is always going to be a hot roast beef sandwich with gravy and mozzarella. I used to get it from La Coma Deli in Ronkonkoma, but nowadays I like to get it at Babylon Village Meat Market.
Oh, man. So what makes it good?
Babylon Village Meat Market is high quality place. They really take butchery seriously. Their roast beef is phenomenal. Their gravy is phenomenal. Phenomenal family.
Yeah.
It's just, what's better than a roast beef sandwich dipped in gravy?
Definitely.
I had it at the beach.
Oh, that's a good beach sandwich. It'll hold up a little bit. You got to eat it
controversial beach sandwich.
You got to eat it in the first hour.
I don't care. Sand gets in it. I'm dunking at the beach.
Rob Martinez, thank you so much for joining This Is Taste.
Thank you very much for having me.
Hey, what's up, Eliza? How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm caffeinating, so it's going to be a good B segment.
I'm doing a little breakfast tea. I don't typically do it, but I was feeling a little horsey this morning, so.
Well, here we are. It's great.
What's your first of three things that you're interested in, excited about, loving, et cetera, et cetera? You know the drill.
My first thing is that I got to go to Kellogg's Diner. I haven't talked about this, right?
Absolutely not.
No.
And please tell me. I've read so much great press. I've read some okay press too. So please tell me everything about it.
I really liked getting to go. I feel like all New Yorkers, especially ones who commute or spend time in Williamsburg, have a lot of feelings about Kellogg's Diner. It's been on that corner for over 100 years, and it was really sad when they closed. So I think off the bat, I'm just really excited to have Kellogg's back open and a late night dining destination in New York. When I went, they have still not been 24/7, but I know that they have plans this fall to go full 24/7, which I'm very excited about. And I think my favorite part of the meal was the dessert, perhaps unsurprisingly. They have this really great pastry case that's glowing temptingly on the counter that's stocked with all kinds of things that Amanda Perdomo is doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think easily the best thing I had, sweet or savory, was the passion fruit tahini icebox pie that they're doing there.
I want to know, the menu is not diner, and it used to be a little bit more of that, pancake, egg style of diner, but there's a brand new chef there, correct?
Yeah, it's more of like a Tex-Mex sort of diner. We got flat nachos, they call them, as opposed to the layered nachos, which were good, but honestly, I think I could have used a little bit more topping to chip ratio on the nachos. We got some great fried chicken, but I do think the dessert is really the standout, and I'm really excited for when they go full 24/7. I think I might have to plan a late night out around there just so I can go get this icebox pie at like 3 or 4 a.m.
Well, that's great. I think a 24-hour spot in New York is hard to find these days.
It's also hard to run. Like I would be very, I think when they go full 24/7, I'd love to have them on the show and just talk about the logistics of when are you doing prep? When are you getting deliveries? How are you paying for staff for full 24/7? I think I was with some restaurant friends when I was there and everyone was very hung up on the logistics part of that.
Yeah, figuring out how to do 24. I mean, good luck to them. Absolutely.
Yeah, we're all rooting for them.
Yeah.
What's your first thing?
Well, I'm going to also speak about a relatively new New York City restaurant. I got to go to Lola's last night, which has gotten a lot of interesting press. 2 stars in New York Times from Melissa Clark. It was her first review as the temporary critic. But all reviews aside, I feel like I'm experiencing one of my favorite new restaurants in New York. It was terrific.
Wow. Okay. I've been really wanting to go, so I'm happy to hear it. Was there a standout thing that you ate?
Many things. And a little background, Suzanne Cups is the chef, and Suzanne hopefully will be on the show at some point. A veteran of New York City restaurants for years. She grew up in South Carolina and has a Filipino background as well. So I think the blending of the South and the Philippines is her bio, but it's not necessarily the like remit for the restaurant. And I think Melissa Clark taps into this idea that it's like a very comfortable, very approachable dinner party / hangout at a house kind of meal in the middle of Manhattan. I think Melissa nailed it with that observation. I love the space. It's in Nomad on 28th Street and 5th. And it's a really open space. They've got poured concrete floors. It feels a little like Otto Boy a little bit, which is cool. I always like that aesthetic in New York. It's not as common. But really, let's talk about food here, because to me, she is doing what she knows, which is Gramercy Tavern, which she's alum of, and really using the Green Market as her playground. And she's doing it so well. I think the highlight for me, and I don't think this is going to be on that long, so sorry if you're going to miss out on it, but it's these BLT toasts with bacon jam, really thick cut tomatoes. FYI, tomatoes are still in season right now in New York. It's like we're recording this on October 20th. So that's pretty crazy.
It's also like 78 degrees out right now. So...
And like 22 days of no rain, it's just an interesting fall. Kind of like the vibe, personally. I like this weather.
It's fake fall, which is why I like
fall. It. But back to the toasts: bacon jam, thick cut tomatoes, kimchi, and dill aioli. I love it. She kind of puts it in 4 bites for the table. She really knows ratio. Felt like when I left the meal, I had about 10 courses between 4 people, and I felt extremely good. It wasn't too much. It wasn't too little. But I like the way Suzanne thinks about New York City dining and like our global interests as diners. And I just loved her popcorn chicken, which is, marinated in buttermilk and soy sauce. I believe I'll talk to her a little bit more about that when we have her on the show. But the fermented hot honey, terrific little dipping sauce. And probably the highlight, is a salad with buttermilk ranch, which, lots of greens. You've got some watermelon radish and some really nice, very velvety greens. But she puts pretzels in it, which is cool. I've never really experienced that. Have you?
No, I mean, maybe on a road trip in a moment of genius, I put pretzels into a salad to go.
Yeah.
But certainly not in a restaurant. Are they just straight up pretzels? Are they being crushed at all?
They're like, okay, good question, good follow-up, good journalism there. I like that.
The questions people need to know.
Questions people need to know. They're homemade, obviously, and they're little bits, and they're not like the rolled gold style.
Oh, that's what I was picturing.
Yeah,
okay.
I didn't sell it right. They're like little like crispy sourdough pretzels, I believe. So they're not like too salty, but it's just a nice inclusion when you're thinking about adding a crunchy bread element to salads, which you should. I loved it. It was terrific.
Well, I'll have to go. I've been wanting to check it out, and your endorsement makes me even more excited to
go.
Definitely
check it out. They're 6 months in, quite busy. Please go. It's a terrific restaurant. What's your next thing?
My next thing is a canned wine.
Oh, I love it.
I know. I feel like there's been a lot of good developments in the ready to drink space. And I think this one is really cool. They're called Famille du Vin, and they're a collab between Zevro Vin, which is a really big natural wine importer here in New York and across the country, and also a New Yorker named Paloma Bray. And they are working with lots of cool winemakers. I first connected with them actually because of a cake zine event that we were doing last month. And I had grand ambitions of keeping some of the wine to drink for myself, but it went incredibly fast. And then I had to just seek it out elsewhere at one of my local wine shops in Brooklyn. I think my favorite wine that I had is this kind of light chilled red that they're doing. That is a Grenache blend with 3 different varietals. And I'm just really excited to see more like cool wine that's being made with people that aren't feeling fussy. I think for a long time, people looked down on canned wine as like it couldn't be good because it's in a can. So to see really cool winemakers like Chateau de Beru, like working in that space, I'm a fan.
I love that you're bringing up canned wine. I think it's a great format for wine, especially if you're not a big drinker in your household and you want to buy the full bottle. Mm-hmm. It's great to have a couple cans around, which we do in our household. There's some cool NA canned wines happening too. I know Leitz is doing one, which is my favorite NA wine out of Germany, and they have a can. It's definitely a white. I'm not quite sure, but I think it's a. We should do a story on it. I think down the road.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of other developments happening in that space, so it would be cool to take more of a look at it. What's your next thing?
My next thing is a media package that came out a couple days ago from Eater LA, and I love it. It tackles how influencers are affecting the LA dining scene and really their unique place in LA. And props to the team there, Matt Kang and his team there. I think it's a terrific package. It's 4 stories, and I'm going to link to it in the show notes. I want to focus on a specific story written by Kathy Chaplin, who is a longtime food writer and blogger. And what she has done is really given a deep and detailed history of the original Los Angeles food bloggers, going back nearly 20 years, but mostly in that 15 to 10-year window. These are folks like Zach Brooks, Bill Esparza, and Sharon Yang of Weezer Monkey. There's a lot of food GPSs in there as well. And I think if you were in LA and you lived there, so maybe you have some insight. I'd love to hear your take, Eliza. Back, I would say 15 years ago, food media in LA was starting to change, and it was moving from LA Times and Jonathan Gold to like these really, ambitious food blogs. New York, of course, was doing that as well, but I think New York had much more established food media, many magazines, and I just love this history that Kathy paints. And one thing that's interesting in the piece is that, we talk about on the show a lot how we are thinking like TikTok and these restaurant reviewers using social platforms are maybe disrupting blogs and disrupting traditional food media. And what's interesting is that during this period, print magazine was thinking about blogs displacing them.
Mm-hmm.
And like you think about, I think we've been very open how we enjoy and we promote TikTok accounts. They're not all for us, but like the movement is interesting. So like she like thinks about the psychology, like what was Jonathan Gold thinking when all these blogs were kind of taking his, stealing the mic from him a little bit. And I think the conclusion is that, Jonathan Gold eventually, when he was later at the LA Times, they would hire some of the bloggers to create content for the LA Times, and she details that. It's a great piece, and I think it's a great document of history of food media in Southern California.
Yeah, I really like looking back at the shifts of different eras of media, because obviously we're in another shift right now. This reminds me, I was reading Emily Sundberg's newsletter, Feed Me, this morning, and she has a blurb at the bottom about a Wall Street Journal story that just came out that says that there are 27 million paid content creators in the U.S.
Wow.
And 44% of them say that social media is their full-time job, which is 7% of the American workforce, if all of these numbers are correct, which I think clearly is an indicator that we're at another big shift that's happening. So I like this idea of going back and seeing what can we learn from this previous shift that was happening in the media space.
Yeah, I'm going to check out that. I saw that in Emily's email this morning. It was terrific. And I like what Matt's done with this piece and the team at Eater LA. I think there's one, like a diary of a TikTok account and what she has eaten over the course of a week. And it's like, wow. They're putting in the work. I mean, I know it's like obviously glamorous to be invited to go to junkets and travel the world for free, but like I recognize the work that many of these TikTokers, I recognize this work that TikTokers put in their craft, and to like discount it and be like a crabby old guy and say like, man, I don't like these guys is super, super false and not my instinct. So bravo to you guys, Eater LA. I'll link to in the show notes. What's your last thing, Eliza?
So I went to this new restaurant called Bridges recently. Have you been there before?
Heard all about it. It's definitely a very exclusive restaurant, I've heard.
Yeah, it's definitely a very exclusive restaurant. It's very beautiful. The chef is Sam Lawrence, who cooked at Estella for a long time as the CDC. And I think that there's a lot of Estella's influence on the menu. And I went there and had like a very sceney and beautiful meal. And I think the highlights for me were these 2 tarts. There was a Comté tart with beautiful chanterelle mushrooms and a chocolate tart for dessert. But I left like really thinking about like who is this restaurant for, and like where are restaurants opening in New York, and what does that say about dining? And what I think is interesting about Bridges is that they opened like very much in the heart of historic Chinatown here in Manhattan, in the longtime home of Hop Shing, which was a restaurant that closed during the pandemic. The space was left vacant for years. When they did begin to open, there was a lot of controversy with the longtime business owners in Chinatown about whether or not Bridges would be able to receive a liquor license. Like there was this effort to kind of try to keep them out of the historic heart of Chinatown because they are not a Chinese restaurant. They're not owned or operated by Chinese people. And I think when I went there, I found myself thinking about it a lot because they're like literally the only business on the block that doesn't have a sign in Chinese characters, only in English. And when you go and eat at this restaurant, it's really beautiful. It's a hard table to get, and it's certainly not a cheap meal either. And it kind of left an interesting taste in my mouth where I had this good meal there, but I just don't think I would go back to eat because obviously, like, you can open a restaurant anywhere you want in New York, and this restaurant was empty. And I think like it does serve the community to have things that are open, but I think at the same time, it maybe is like, it's not really serving the neighborhood of Chinatown. And certainly where it is, like in historic Chatham Square, it's not even on like what some people would say is Dime Square or other parts of Lower Manhattan. It really is like next to where the original Nam Wah is and like all of these other things.
It's a really great point and a topic to consider. I think we dine today not just by what is on the plate. Like that is not what dining is. It's about context. It's about the neighborhoods. It's about the way neighborhoods are integrated into menus. I think what's interesting and maybe a bit of why you have mixed feelings perhaps about this restaurant is that it's called Bridges, and the Two Bridges neighborhood is where it's located, which is a traditionally Chinese neighborhood in the Lower East Side. And using the branding of this neighborhood in your kind of like hotspot restaurant amongst traditional community, the traditional community is it's gentrification full rip here. And I think mixed feelings. I recognize it and I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of change happening in Chinatown, and we certainly see a younger generation of Asian American restaurant owners and store owners like Golden Diner or Beverly's that are opening, and they are like, changing up the history of the neighborhood a little bit, but they're still serving the community and they still have access points in. Yeah. And I think especially just the heart of Chinatown where this restaurant is, it really is like even the Chase Bank nearby has Chinese characters on it, which I don't know, that's probably a separate conversation about how like international corporations are masquerading as being a part of a community. But I just found myself thinking about it a lot as we see a lot of new restaurants opening in New York this fall. And I guess I'm curious for listeners if people have eaten there, if people have thoughts about it, just kind of talking about like what does it mean when restaurants open in different places.
It's great. And I think it's a great example of why long-form restaurant criticism is so powerful. And Ryan Sutton brought that up in his episode. I'm hoping this restaurant gets reviewed by the Times, by like, the New Yorker. And I think in great criticism, these topics will be covered and negotiated. So we'll see if there's consensus around your feelings here.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to like pick on Bridges because certainly there are lots of other restaurants that have opened in like gentrifying neighborhoods across New York, across the country, across the world. I just think this is a recent example, and I do think like the very specific block that it's on would feel different even than something 5 blocks away.
No, you're saying this straightforward, and I appreciate it. I have a separate question about the neighborhood. What's your take on Time Again? Because Time Again, I went during Fashion Week and I was with a friend. I don't live in the city anymore. I'm just outside, so I'm not like hanging out late night too much. But they like stopped serving alcohol randomly because of some permitting shit. I know Vampire Weekend just did a pop-up show there. It's called like Times Square now with a singular because dimes and is now uncool and time again is now cool. I'm being funny here. Eliza, what is your take of Time Again?
Well, it's interesting because I think there's been efforts to curtail the crowd of people that go to Time Again. Like it was very popular over the summer because it spilled out into the street that's next to, is it Columbus Park down there?
It's Columbus Park. Yeah.
So there is a one-way street and it's on the corner. So people were just kind of standing in the street and it had this kind of block party vibe, which I think is nice. I think it's cool that you can just walk up to a bar and see your friends there and you can go in and get a drink or you can just kind of stand and loiter and go along your way. I certainly have spent time at Time Again. But recently I was walking by and I saw that there was kind of, I don't know if it was caution tape or scaffolding or something, but it seemed that they were trying to like fence that in. So I think that like certainly as GQ and other places have been writing about this bar and Vampire Weekend has done pop-up shows there, like maybe they're trying to curtail it a little bit. I think it's funny also because you see this trend in the Lower East Side around there specifically of people sitting on like the little plastic stools that are very common in Southeast Asia. And the other place that does it is, a couple blocks up that way, but it's Mom, which is a Vietnamese restaurant. So it's very much in the character of that restaurant to be doing that there. And they just opened this cool wine bar called Lai Rai next door. But Time Again doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the tradition of people sitting on these stools. It's just like a easy way for people to, sit and be outside there. So that's just kind of a side commentary that I think is interesting to be seeing, like increasingly people sitting on these little stools on the sidewalks here in Manhattan.
Yeah. I think like for me, when I was, hanging out there for a drink, I kind of enjoyed the way that they're using New York creatively. And, they're in that gray area permitting. And I think having a place where people can gather affordably, if it's like having a drink and being outside, smoking cigs, doing all that. And like, I think that that's really great to bring energy downtown. It reminds me of the East Village 25 years ago, which I think had that spirit had been lost until the pandemic when Dime Square became a thing and Lower Manhattan really saw a boom in people hanging out outside and gathering. And I like it. It seems like it's creative, and I'm all for it. Though the Vampire Weekend show seemed like it was just a bunch of fashion editors who were invited to sit in the front row and take Instagram photos of each other.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm just better because I didn't get to go to the show.
Yeah, right. No, me too. I'm totally bitter. By the way, I'm totally bitter that I didn't get invited. That's my read.
Yeah, I think it's always funny when it becomes like a cliche to go somewhere. Yeah. And I've been at parties or screenings or whatever recently where many different people have separately said, oh, let's go to Time Again after this. So I think it's always kind of funny when it gets to that level, but I do like the spirit of it being easy to just roll up somewhere and see people that and be able to socialize without having to pay a cover at the door and go in somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we're aligned there. I like that.
Do you have another thing to share? We got off tangent, I think.
We did, but if you're with us now, and I think we have unlimited time here. It is free to post a podcast. I wonder if there's like a 14-hour podcast. There's got to be something like that.
Well, I listened to a 14-hour White Noise on Spotify, so it's just a version of that.
Ooh, let's maybe pivot to White Noise. My last one is a restaurant. I was just in Southern California, and I got to spend some time in Alhambra, and I got to go to Yang's Kitchen. Have you heard of Yang's?
I've been dying to go to Yang's Kitchen.
I'm excited to share my first take, and I hope to go back. I know we're planning a trip this December, Clayton, Eliza, and I, to Southern California to do some episodes, and stay tuned for those. I love Yang's. I've heard about it from a couple food writer friends. I went there with Jason Stewart from Halangan and food writing, and he was a big fan. So had a wonderful brunch. They call it brunch and dinner. That's how the menu is broken up, but it's more like lunch all day, cafe, breakfast, lunch, and then they stop at around 3 and then start at 5. So I only had the midday menu, but man, so many things to say about this restaurant. First, like downtown Alhambra is rad, and like walking around and seeing a real mix of Cantonese restaurants and boba shops and then cashmere boutiques. It's like it's a rapidly changing neighborhood, and it's just interesting. But Yang's are really delivered. The menu splits between like Hong Kong Cantonese and then like I would call it like all day cafe bistro, like you could see it in Paris. And like there's a chicken liver mousse that's next to some cold noodles, and for me there's a few favorites that come to mind. I think like the cornmeal mochi pancakes with this like a little slather of butter is really a hot tip. Like you got to order that even if it's later in the day and you're not feeling like pancakes. One thing that I don't want to bury the lead on, this is like a sneaky gluten-free restaurant. They make it very clear in the menu what's gluten-free, and there's a lot of gluten-free offerings. I'm not sure if that's intentional or just the way that they're cooking there. But I also love the breakfast plate, which is like a composed, like there's eggs and like greens, and then you get a choice of a protein so that you could have braised tofu, you could have dried steelhead, you could have hanger steak, really nice bento style. I loved it. And the cold noodles were, I would say a little bit in the don don variety in terms of the way the sauces marry with the noodles and the vegetables. Really great. So that you could get like pancakes, don don noodles, incredibly great V60 pour over, cappuccinos, and then to close it. And this is like something that everyone talks about is their soft serve, and their classic is Weiser Farm melon, which is like the cool melon in Southern California, and the great melon.
There are good melons. I just had some when I was back.
Yeah, no, I mean I don't want to be shallow and say cool because it's just like a guy, a farmer, he's doing his thing. But like the cool restaurants and the best restaurants are using Weiser and cream. So it's Weiser melon and cream soft serve. Just like top to bottom, a really cool place. I loved like you can get on the Yelp waiting list pretty easily. I think I waited like 15 minutes, and I know there's longer lines at dinner, but honestly, worth going out to Alhambra, really close to South Pasadena. I didn't realize I'm not like so familiar with driving around there, but pretty close to LA. Love it.
I'm really hoping we can go when we're back in LA soon.
I think we might be making a stop there. So maybe we'll have more to say about Yang's Kitchen in forthcoming episodes.
Okay, I look forward to it.
Thanks for sharing your 3 things.
You too.
This is Taste is hosted by Eliza Abarbanel and me, Matt Rodbard. The show is produced by Shalia Harris and Pat Stango and edited by Clayton Gumbert. Theme music by Steve Rydell. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter for updates on all cool things that are happening.